Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I'm Claire Kirkpatrick, and I'm the Club Development Manager at Motorsport UK. Welcome to the final instalment of our monthly marketing show. If you've missed any of the previous sessions, then you can catch up with them on the Motorsport UK YouTube channel. To start with, we just have our normal housekeeping. So everybody is on mute except for our panelists. But if you'd like to ask a question, then please do so using the Q&A function, which is at the bottom of your screen. Feel free to submit questions as we go through the session, and we'll do our best to answer as many as possible as we go along. So this session is being recorded and will be available afterwards in about a week or so on the YouTube channel. Also tomorrow you'll receive an email with a link to a survey, which would really appreciate your feedback and ideas for future webinars. So as with previous sessions, tonight we have Andy Lambert, the co-founder of Content Cal, but we also have here today Andy Lawrence from Bristol Motor Club and Izzy Holman from Southern Motor Club. So a huge thank you to all three of you for giving up your time tonight to be part of this webinar. So I think let's get started.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Claire, and good evening, everyone. And yeah, thank you if you made it this far. If this is the first one you're watching, probably be good to watch the other ones. But if you've watched the series, yeah, congratulations on making it this far. And fortunately for everyone, you can breathe a sigh of relief because you're going to hear mostly from some wonderful, I would say, I was about to call you victims, but active participants in this session. So thank you, Izzy, and yeah, thank you, Andy. So this session is going to be really useful because actually we've gone through a whole heap of like strategy and tips and tricks over the last 4 months. We started it in November last year, these sessions. So yeah, thank you for your attendance over the time, and thank you for the wonderful feedback that's come in. So that's absolutely brilliant. And yeah, really, this is a kind of a real nice way to take these sessions to a bit of a conclusion. And of course, all of those sessions live on in perpetuity. So, you know, feel free to check them out at any other point. But because now really, ultimately, these sessions are always and have been designed with the clubs in mind. So what better opportunity than to get individuals within the clubs doing this kind of thing that have attended a bunch of these webinars and already fallen victim to my narrative and waffling for the last 4 months, and talk about their own approaches to this and the strategies, the things they're doing, the challenges they're facing, how they're overcoming things. So even having had a bit of a initial chat with Izzy and Andy prior to this, already there's some two very different approaches to it, which is going to be really interesting to dig into. So with that, we're going to go into that. I'm going to start with Izzy, but just before we do that, actually, just to call out, so there's the Q&A function in the bottom of your screen. So rather than the typical style of like a presentation and then a Q&A, this is going to be a much more open and interactive session. It's built around questions, and ideally, we all want you to get as much from this session as possible. So any questions that you have as you go through, anything you want to know more about, like, you know, both myself and everyone on the panel can chime in with different views and perspectives. So it should be a really good one because we've got some fantastic expertise and experiences and insights on this session. So use the Q&A and let's go into it. So Izzy, let's start with you. So let's start with a bit of kind of background to you and how you got involved with the club to begin with.
Yes, so I'm a third year broadcast journalism student at Nottingham Trent University, which is where I am now. And so I'm doing a journalism degree, and social media and PR kind of go hand in hand with that. And I've loved motorsport ever since I was a kid, and since, you know, lockdown 1, I decided that I wanted to work in the motorsport industry. So I saw this opportunity on the Girls on Track Facebook page. Louise Goodman is our vice president at Southern Car Club, and she posted that they had an opportunity for a social media and PR officer, and I thought that sounds like a great way. I was panicking at the time that I didn't have any ad work experience, but not any in the motorsport industry. And so I decided to go for it. I made a little sort of fake calendar for January of like content I would do, and I, you know, wrote down all my ideas and submitted that, emailed that to Louise, and then I got a call to say I'd got it, basically. So that's a short version of how I got involved with the club.
Love it, because it's come up in sessions over the last 4 months or so that, you know, clubs have struggled with, you know, resource and finding the time to do that, and expertise, because naturally social media is a fast moving industry, as we all know. Things change continually. So do you think there's some kind of lessons in your experience of how you got involved with Southern Car Club for other clubs to think about, and how they might be able to work or offer kind of similar positions for yourself in other clubs? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think especially if you know, something like social media, unless you work in social media, it's quite difficult to get your head around it unless you're Gen Z like myself. So if you want someone that is sort of up to date with things like TikTok and like things that, you know, have only you know, new platforms, then, you know, if you want someone who knows about social media, you've got to go to social media to find those people. So I think advertising in something like the Girls on Track Facebook page, which is ever growing, I think is definitely the way to go about it. And I think if you can interact with those pages that are bigger than yours, like Girls on Track is obviously, it's a bigger Facebook group than the Southern Car Club Facebook group, then you're getting the name of your club out into those bigger communities to try and bring people into your community as well, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense, actually. And it's just, I just found it particularly interesting, like, because you have the perfect expertise to deliver this kind of work to the club, basically, and fill a really interesting gap. And yeah, and it's really interesting and it's kind of reassuring, really, because as we've gone through these sessions, we've had questions of like, how can I do this? It feels overwhelming. And it's really nice to think, actually, someone with your credibility, which, you know, to deliver this kind of work for a particular club completely free of charge, but ultimately it gives you experience at the same time. So it's a really nice kind of quid pro quo situation, and it's a really good example. So I just wanted to call that one out. So let's go on to like what you actually do on a kind of day to day. What are the things that you were doing for Southern Car Club around like social media and content?
Yes, so off the back of one of these webinars, I created a Facebook group for Southern Car Club because we just had a page, which now has, I think I checked, it has 215 members now, which I think's not bad. So I post in that every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday as a way of, you know, things that start conversations like we've talked about in these webinars. And then other people will also post some of their own, are starting to post some of their own content when they come across things. Maybe they're cleaning out their loft and they find a load of stuff from Southern Car Club events and they'll post pictures of it or something like that. Something that's really nice that sort of gets people talking about their memories and things like that. And then I also am trying to put out content on our other platforms that entices new members. So the group is kind of for existing members, to keep them in contact with each other, especially at the moment when, you know, we haven't seen each other for ages. I've not met any of the people from the club in person yet. So because I only started my role in January. So that's an existing club thing, existing members thing, to keep them interacting with each other and so they don't miss each other too much. And then I'm trying to create other content on like Instagram, Twitter, and to put on the Facebook page as well, which will entice new members. So it's kind of like a two-pronged way of going about it. Content for existing members and content to try and entice new members in, which is sort of where I can flex my creative muscles a bit. So I'm struggling at the moment because we don't have any events to go to for me to capture any content at. And because it wasn't something we were doing before, there's not sort of a lot of old content I can repurpose. I'm sort of getting my hands on some of it at the moment, but there's still not a lot of stuff that I can repurpose. But on little plug. On Thursday, so in 2 days' time at 6 p.m, we are doing an interview, an Instagram live with Louise Goodman, who is our vice president. And we're hoping to do more of those. I've had some really good experiences in work that I do for other platforms where I've just contacted people in industry and they're quite happy to help you out. And it's not a scary thing. I just send a LinkedIn message or an email or a DM on like Twitter or Instagram. So you just message them on their social media and they're like, yeah, sure, I'll do that. Fine. It's like half an hour of their evening, one evening in their week. And it's not a lot of time. So yes, we're doing that at 6 p.m. on Thursday on our Instagram page, which is a way of creating content without needing to have that content first, because it's a live and then you can save the live to your Instagram TV. So it's not just it's there and then it's gone. You can keep it. I can then post it onto our Facebook. I can direct people there from Twitter. So it's, yeah, we're getting there, but that's mainly what I'm doing at the moment. I think that was a very long waffly answer, but
no, the answer is absolutely brilliant. So the two-stage strategy makes a whole heap of sense. So the Facebook group for member engagement, driving that community, and by the sounds of it, we started to see some good results. And having that level of group membership, absolutely brilliant. And yeah, in terms of the kind of more outreach and the promotional strategy, would you say like you're kind of leaning with Facebook first and creating content more for Facebook or more for Instagram, would you say, and doing the kind of the promotional part of your strategy?
Well, because I've got loads of ideas for stuff that would work across Instagram, Twitter and Facebook, but that requires me to have pre-shot video content a lot of the time. So I want to do a like little trailer for the club, which is like, you know, like, because my degree, I know how to video edit. So I want to do like, you know, cool rally shots of cars going everywhere and, you know, making it look really fun that you can use as like a pinned tweet or something. So it's the first tweet that comes up on your Twitter page. To entice people as a trailer for the club, basically. But, you know, stuff like that, I need pre-shot content, which is difficult to get at the moment. And the pre-shot content that we have is from quite a while ago, so it's not necessarily very accurate. So I guess I want to be leading with content for Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. But because of the constraints of the pandemic and not being able to go out and shoot the content the way I see it in my head kind of thing, I think Instagram is quite a good place for being able to create content when you don't have a lot at your disposal. So I guess in answer to your question, at the moment it is Instagram, because with things like lives, it's just you having a chat with someone. So you don't need a lot, you just need to write down some questions beforehand kind of thing. So yeah, I'd say with the constraints of the pandemic and not being able to go to events and stuff, Instagram is probably, yeah, what I'm leading with.
Nice. Okay. And I really love the approach. I mean, not everyone has an ambassador or ambassador chairperson. Louise Goodman, what kind of capacity?
Vice president.
Vice president, sorry. Some big title anyway. Yeah. So with that, I mean, of course, not everyone has Louise Goodman at their disposal, right? So that notwithstanding, that taking that approach of using other people's channels, because there's two learnings here, like utilizing other people's channels is so powerful in raising the awareness of your own channel, your own like Instagram page or your, you know, Facebook profile or whatever it is, right? So I think that is super interesting. And you already raised the point earlier, Izzy, about like, you know, sharing your content in the Girls on Track community. That's a private community, but as an example of like working with others to amplify your reach. But I think the interesting takeaway, however, is working with others to kind of either interview them, get a narrative on things, because every club must have some members with some fantastic stories to tell. And all of those kind of things, it does take a little bit of time, a bit of coordination, but even if you don't fancy like doing an Instagram live, because some people might be like, what, how? But even doing something like that, where you could just go ahead and, you know, do a Zoom meeting like this, interview one of your club members that has a really interesting story of like their journey into motorsport, the things they've taken, the trophies they won, brilliant stuff. whilst you don't have footage necessarily because there's no events going on, but you do have the human stories of the members to tell. And I think that is for me, I find that a really interesting content angle. And one, people love to talk about themselves because everyone will take an opportunity to have an interview with, and people like to hear about other stories as well. These are all members of a club. This is a community, right? So if we can't get together, it's still great to hear about, Andy's story or Izzy's story or Claire's story, for example. So I really like that as an angle. Sorry, I got waffly there too, but any thoughts on that, Izzy? Do you agree?
I mean, the Zoom thing is also really easy to do. You literally just press record. When you end the meeting, it stops recording and it will save it in a folder. The folder will pop up when it's, done its thing. And then all you've got to do is take that video file and upload it onto Facebook. You don't have to do any editing of it at all. And then I know Instagram Live's it's something that is easy for me, but that's because I've had Instagram since I was about 12. So, there are ways of finding things like just recording a Zoom call that's so simple. There's no editing. There's nothing scary, so to speak. You can just have a conversation, record it, upload it onto Facebook. Don't have to do anything. That's it, done. And you've created something that's valuable for your members because they'll love to hear about that person's story. But equally, I've got Louise Goodman at my disposal, luckily. But if you don't have someone like that, even just contacting people that are, part of the motorsport industry, like I said before, I've found that people are so happy to help you out and just give up, an hour, half an hour of their time. I think especially because we haven't been seeing each other, people are I don't know if they're more receptive because I've only ever been contacting people since the pandemic started. But I have found that, there's so much going on virtually that people are really happy to just easily agree to it because they don't have to go anywhere to do it. They just turn their laptop on, join the Zoom, have a chat. It's easy, and I think it's achievable for everyone.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, definitely. So yeah, before we start hearing some of Andy's story, actually, is there anything you'd like to share? Any examples of posts from your Facebook page? Share your screen and have a look at some of those Facebook posts and things.
Our Facebook page, yes. So I hope everyone can see that.
Yep.
So actually, someone other than me has posted something most recently. They found a load of stuff from an event in 1985, just some old negatives of some rallying, and shared it into our group. It's kind of difficult for me because I don't know if the people that post, if they're not on committee or if a committee member hasn't told me about them, I have no idea who they are. And I have no idea their relevance to the club or anything like this because I've only been here since January and I haven't been able to go to any events or meet anyone. But so my kind of thing that I do is like this. Obviously Murray Walker passed away and we learned that over the weekend. So I wanted to do something because, as you can see here, he's sort of been at our awards dinner and things like that. So I wanted to get people sharing their memories. I thought that would be a nice tribute to him. So that was yesterday's post. As you can see, this is people finding old bits of paperwork and posting it, which is really what I want to happen is for people to put their stuff in there and it not just to be me share a photo of this and share a photo of that. But if you want it, so other things I do is the prompt thing, so people can send in pictures of race circuits. It honestly, a lot of the time, here's our Instagram Live, another plug, and this, I made this, Louise sent me the photo, but there's a website called Canva, CANVA, which gives you the dimensions for all of the social media posts, and I just typed all of that in there. So that's very very easy for anyone to do if they're because it's confusing I don't know what the dimensions are for each different social media because I just use Canva and it tells it for me. But yeah, this has got 18 comments, this one, so this did quite well. Was one because it was International Women's Day, which was really nice. I was really glad that people got on that. There's lots of this one had 37 comments. I think ones that tend to do better on our group are ones that are memories based and reminiscing. Those tend to do very well. So this is really lovely because obviously people have shared, because I asked for photos, people have put a lot of photos in, which is really nice for other people to see. But yeah, sometimes I think I wasn't feeling particularly inspired that day, so I really didn't think anyone was gonna. I was really scared that no one was gonna do it, but I still got some people sending their pictures in of what their thank God it's Friday face was. I couldn't think of anything motorsport related on that particular Friday, so it's not. Sometimes it's when you've got, sometimes I haven't repeated one yet since January, so I've really surprised myself. But sometimes it's quite difficult to find a new aspect of motorsport, and that was a bit of a cop-out one. But yeah, there's just lots of random things. Basically, I there's no rhyme or reason. I just try and think of something motorsport related, like liveries or tracks, or try and do different aspects. Maybe a single seater, maybe rally, maybe whatever, and just post. And some do better than others. I've played about with the time. I think about 5:30 normally works best, but that's for us. That could be different for other people as well. You just got to play about really and make it regular. So that's why I do Monday, Wednesday, Friday, because then people kind of expect it to be there. But yeah, that's what our Facebook group looks like. That's kind of a long rambling explanation of the way my brain works.
It's excellent, to be honest. And I know it's always hard showing your own personal kind of creativity and getting everyone to look at it. So, thank you for doing that. It takes a bit of courage to do that. So, but fundamentally, it's the most important thing is that every single thing you're doing, you're asking a question or prompting some engagement. There's no statement, there's no fact. It's just all you're doing really is the kind of social media equivalent of what I'm doing here, which is moderating a conversation and trying to encourage conversation. And that's it, because as soon as your group starts doing well like that and getting 32 comments and 200 people, I think a thing to call out actually is that you've got 213 members. What was the number?
Although Martin's asked to join, so I will imminently accept his request.
Yeah. So, but what I noticed is that we just over 200 members, but your content's getting seen by 130, 150, 160. As a percentage, that's absolutely massive, because sometimes we forget in social media, or people doing social media, is that Facebook does not show your message to everyone. It selects it based on quality, based on what Facebook thinks. Do people need to see this? And of course, not everyone's on Facebook anytime. It's not like sending an email. So to hit that level of visibility and have it seen by that many people and that higher percentage, it just goes to show that Facebook really, as we've been saying for the last 4 months, Facebook values interaction more than anything else. And that's, perfect case in point. What a brilliant example. I'll pretend it was all because of my training, but the reality is you probably would have done it anyway, but it's brilliant. So
am I right in thinking that the comment is that you had a question and that had 32 comments? Is that, Andy, you said before that when you use those question parts on Facebook groups, they seem to be promoted more through Facebook, would you say?
Well, I wouldn't say they're promoted more as such as a content format, but as you can see in the kind of share yours example that Izzy showed, it's a very eye-catching thing. But I think what I like to commend you on as well is it'd be quite tempting to kind of do that all the time, but I notice you use it a lot, but you don't overuse it, maybe once a week, if that. So yeah, sorry, I'll let you answer that question.
I don't want it to get repetitive, because I think I've had kind of groups or pages or whatever that I've followed, or just even friends that I don't talk to so much that I've like unfriended or something like that, because it just annoys me. I don't want to see, like, if someone's posting stuff that I don't want to see all the time, I'm just going to stop following it or unfriend that person, or, you know, so I do it on Twitter all the time. I'll follow someone, decide I don't like their tweets, and then unfollow them. So I don't, obviously I'm aware of that's the way I behave on social media. So I'm trying to avoid making other people behave like that, which is why I try and do different things. But yeah, and what Claire said about the prompt thing, I think it's just the fact that there's comments on it. I don't think it's necessarily the prompt thing that Facebook promotes. I think it is just if there's a lot of comments and a lot of interaction with it, then Facebook, you'll see it more, basically.
I'm with you. Yeah, I agree with that. Martin's asked a question. So before we actually hand over to Andy, do you want to pop in the Q&A? Martin's asked, how many members of the Southern Car Club? I'm not sure if you'll be able to answer all of this, but I have some thoughts on it anyway, so I'd be interested in your take too. But how many members of the Southern Car Club are paid up members? We only have 186 on our club group, but only 40% are paid members. Ideas for conversion?
Well, as I'm quite new and I don't know anyone outside of the committee, I can't answer that. I do know that I've seen people say, oh, I haven't been a paid member for a long time, but this is really nice to see, kind of thing. So I do know that there are quite a lot of people that aren't necessarily paid members on there. I couldn't give you a percentage like you've got. But I think in terms of conversion, what I would hope to see is when we are running events again, obviously they will be posted about in our group, because it would be silly not to. And I'd hope that would entice people to come to those events. I think it's just that, really. I don't think you need to worry that you've got 60% of your members of your group aren't paid members of the club, because I think as soon as you can start doing events, if they're kind of on the fence and they don't know, they'll see your coverage of the events and be like, oh, that looks like that's loads of fun, let's go to that. Or they know for sure that they want to go to some events, and so when you start running them, they'll come and pay straight away to be members. But yeah, I don't think that it's something to worry about. I actually think it's probably quite a good thing, because that means you're enticing new people to listen to your content or see your content.
Exactly. I would back that 100%. In an ideal world, you'd want to get as many people in your group as possible and not make it exclusive for paying members, because the group, as we've been talking about for the last few months, is where a lot of good quality interaction happens. And that's where the most value of Facebook could be. I mean, groups are only great to set up for existing members just to get it going and getting the interaction going, because they're more likely to engage. But if you can get, the more people you can get into that group that are non-members, exactly that, like the fear of missing out will be strong when the events start going on. So yeah, I think that's brilliant, and it will naturally convert, but conversion comes after you've nailed the engagement bit. So yeah, of which I think that's a good example of that. So well, this definitely won't be the last we hear from you in this session anyway, Izzy, but Andy, you've been waiting very patiently. So let's flip that over to you now, actually. So yeah, do you want to do a quick bit of kind of intro, like your background, how you got involved with the club as well, if that's all right?
Yeah, sure. Although one thing I was going to point out was the TikTok thing made me laugh right at the beginning, because I had a chat with my one of my apprentices a couple of weeks ago, and he mentioned TikTok, and I was like, I don't see the point of it. It's just like people doing little dances, isn't it? And he said, no, people talk about politics and all sorts on there. And my mind just went, what? I thought everyone was like between the ages of 6 and 8 on there. You know? Getting too old. And I think that says a lot, actually. But yeah, so you asked the question anyway. So yeah, I've been getting a bit old. I've been in IT for 20 odd years. I'm a solutions architect for a large multinational, and I've been competing in motorsport for best part of 20 years as well. I've been a committee member on Bristol Motor Club since 2007. So I've done a little bit of organising. I was magazine editor for the best part of 10 years, and I've taken on CompSec this year, which basically means keeping an Excel spreadsheet. Google Sheet, actually, but you know.
Basically the same. So I know this is quite a broad question. So because I was going to ask like the things you do from the club, and having had a chat with you, I know that's quite a broad range of stuff that you do for the club. So like from a social media and content marketing perspective, so does all that responsibility that fall to you at the moment, Andy?
It does, yeah. So there's a couple of us with like admin rights on the Facebook page, but realistically, it is just me that does all of it. Yeah, the problem with motorsport is we're all old men, and yeah, I'm probably one of the younger ones on the committee, and maybe even in the club. Who knows? But there's a lot of people that aren't interested in social media, and I love the fact that there was some kind of interview process for becoming the social media person for a car club. That blows my mind. The fact that you might have people wanting to do it rather than someone, you know, doing it because they realize it's necessary and someone has to. Yeah, I love doing it, but that's pretty much where we're at. Someone's got to do it, and if nobody else is going to do it, then I'll crack on and do the social media. But it is all time consuming. But it's just a small part of what I do for the club. I seem to get tied up in lots of things, but that seems to be the way clubs run. There's a small core group of people, like maybe 10% that do 90% of the work to make sure events happen. And then you've got a bigger collective that come and help on event days. And then you've got the people that turn up to most events. And then you've got the people that just turn up occasionally. And it's just kind of, it's a ladder working up, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of your approach to social, other than, you know, doing it when you can kind of thing, so what is the stuff that you do when you can? Is it Facebook group, page? Is it just Facebook?
It's all of it. Yeah. I'm properly scattergun with my approach. There is zero planning pretty much. It's just like, I'm just going to do that. And sometimes it'll go out on one platform, sometimes it'll go out on 7 platforms, depending on what I'm doing at that point. So actually, you're going to hate me for doing this, but I've got a little diagram. He says. So wrong one, content car. See, I didn't prepare this very well, did I? There we go. I've got a little diagram. So these are all the platforms that we run and how they're all connected. So like we started off with the website years ago. I've stitched in since seeing all of these marketing forum things. Content Car, signed up for that. It's revolutionary. We've got the MailChimp hooked up to the website as well. So people that's our only direct marketing. And then I've got some automation stuff to post out some of the stuff to different platforms. So we've got LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook page, Twitter, and then we've got 4 groups for different things with varying levels of success. So our Facebook page is over 2,000 people. Twitter's 1,600, but I've been kind of cultivating them for best part of a decade. The groups, I realize I need to do it, but I'm struggling. I'm not creative, and I don't really, it doesn't work. I've never had 34 comments on a post in my life ever on anything. I'm obviously not interesting enough. I dream of those sorts of numbers.
So what's the reasoning behind the 4 Facebook groups?
Scattergun, shoot from the hip. So there was the original group that I set up years ago and nobody ever uses. We run the Vincenzo and Sons Bristol MX5 Challenge, which is a really popular championship, and actually one of the big features of our club. And one of the people in that started a group years ago, and then I've kind of taken that on. He gave me the admin on that. I've brought that into the group, and that's 113 people I checked today, versus 272 in the main group. But I think in terms of posts, it's like 5 to 1 with the MX5s versus the main group. I started another group for a different championship that didn't take off, and that's kind of been repurposed at lunchtime today for a new championship. And then I also started a tech talk group because I'm a bit of a geek, how we can use tech to help do stuff with the club. I don't know why I put that as a private group. Shooting from the hip again. 18 members.
So, like, to me, it feels like, yeah, notwithstanding the tech talk one, because that is, a bit more niche, but wouldn't it make sense to kind of consolidate those 3 other groups into one, especially if the Vincenzo MX5 Championship is driving good engagement? I know you're kind of like diluting the content a little bit, but ultimately there'll be richer, more diverse stuff in there and better engagement across them all. Because you've got some brilliant numbers across the rest of your social channel. It just goes to show that those, it's a perfect case in point, actually. It goes to show like your overarching numbers of like 2,000 followers on Facebook, for example, doesn't actually really mean much unless you're driving really good engagement. So it's much better to have a smaller niche group and grow it from there on the basis of, it's kind of like the polar opposite to what we were talking about with Izzy. You've put a huge amount of work into building the community, but because it kind of slips off the radar a little bit, Facebook go, well, no one's commenting on this and it's a bit sporadic, we're not going to push it out as much and show it to as many people. So it's a really interesting case in point. Anyway, that's a large waffly way of me asking a question of like, would you consolidate these groups or no?
I've thought about that, but so I'm going to ask you a question. How? Like, do I just close a group down and say, hey, we're all moving here and hope everyone does?
That's pretty much all you can do, to be honest. So I would pick the group though, because initially I was going to say, well, keep your group that is, your Bristol Motor Club one, and then kind of move everything else over. But if you're getting all of the good, rich engagement that's happening in the MX5 one, I would rename that group, and, call out like, home of the Vincenzo MX5 Championship or whatever, put that in like the description of the group, for example. But I would rename that group, and then I wouldn't remove the other groups for now, and I'd probably leave them for now. But yeah, your messages will all be like, come over to here, for example. You're just pulling people over, because if we can drive more members into the group, for each new member, they're going to be shown like content, because they've just joined. So they're going to be shown content. So it's going to start getting promoted with more new members coming into it. So if you can use that as the other groups as feeders for that, even if you're just getting a trickle of a couple of new subscribers a day, or new group members rather, that is a good sign for that Facebook page. And then we can start driving some interaction using some of the examples that that Izzy has shown. But sadly, and I guess this is the reality of the situation, where this is what Izzy has been asked to focus on, whereas this is something that you do alongside a million other technical tasks for the club. So, because the real key here is just about the commitment to a publishing schedule. You're going to do it 3 times a week, you know, once 3 times a week at a certain time. Unless you can commit to that, then it's going to be really hard for that to grow and maintain. I mean, does that make sense at all?
It does, yeah. Sorry, I've just seen messages coming in on the chat saying that people get bored by MX5 drivers, and that's a fair comment, really. I get bored by myself quite a lot. Yeah, I can see there's pluses and minuses. I mean, the plus point of the MX5 group is that people join it because they've got an MX5 or because they're interested in cheap motorsport, and I suppose it picks people up from a different demographic. It's a difficult one.
Yeah, and there's no, I mean, much of this stuff is opinion rather than fact. But fundamentally, you know, most people are getting involved with these clubs because everyone's interested in grassroots motorsport. We're all petrol heads fundamentally, and you know, diversity of content. Not every post is going to be for everyone, but different people engage with different things, and that's good, and that's what you want, because that's what your club represents and that's what it stands for, and that's why people want to be a member of it. You don't have to love every post, but fundamentally you've got, you know, the purpose of the club is to connect a community around and connect people around a certain objective, which is, you know, budget motorsport. Because if you want to go for a different group with different category, I mean, where do you stop, for example? Because, you know, MX5 for one, 12 car rally for another. Yeah, you create really niche communities, but it becomes too hard, too sporadic to grow. And fundamentally, if you're not posting enough and not making it frequent enough, if you create too much of a fragmented approach, this will happen, where you ultimately don't get any single growth centralized around a certain area. So, I mean, and that's my view on it, having grown, you know, large groups. And it's an example of, you know, Girls on Track, right? Not every post will be loved by everyone in Girls on Track, but it's fundamentally united about a single initiative, Girls on Track, funnily enough, and anything around women in motorsport. So some posts, no interest for someone. Some posts will be about, you know, W Series, and some will be completely unrelated to anything to do with cars and be about people's journey in motorsport into mechanics or whatever. It's not going to be for everyone, but it unites around a certain theme and topic, and that's why I think it's really, really powerful. I don't know if Claire, you have any thoughts and feedback on that?
Yeah, I think there are two sides to it, aren't there? Really, you can see it from both sides, but I think Girls on Track, I think, is exactly that. We have everything from karting to rallying to Formula One, all united in the love of motorsport. So, and I think actually it comes down to your time and managing those groups, and how, if you can physically manage the different groups, if you can manage them and make them all work, then great, go for it. But if it's going to be more successful because you just don't have the time and it'll be easier to manage one, then consider doing it that way.
Yeah, I think that's it's a fair thought. And, you know, yeah, Simon, you've asked it's a really good question. It's good to have some kind of like healthy debate, because some of this is like, like I said, there's no fact, and we're all trying to find our way. There's different experiences for everyone. So it's kind of good to highlight this kind of stuff. So like, Andy, back to you. So what are the kind of things that you've changed in your approach at all, or the things you might be planning on changing?
So I covered earlier that I've switched to Content Cow. Good sales pitch.
Pay him to say this, by the way.
No, in honesty, it's been I found it a really good platform to use, and the fact that I can stitch it all together is great. The limitation on the free plan, which is what we're on at the moment, is that I can only send a certain number of posts, which really means that you need to be on the paid plans, and then that's a whole nother kettle of fish about, you know, can we spend that sort of money, which is tiny really, and we'll probably bring all of it back again in terms of more people joining the club. But anyway, I'm diverging onto a different topic, rabbit hole. So other things I've done, like I've been more consistent in the use of hashtags. Again, Content Cow does that snippets thing, which is great, revolutionary. I don't have to go and find hashtags and think. If you say what hashtag should I put on that, I'm like, oh no, not a clue. I went to besthashtags.com, as you pointed out earlier on, and I typed in motorsport. Then I tried MX5, then hill climb, and then I was out of ideas. So that's kind of where I'm at. So I've started using more platforms as well. I've actually started using LinkedIn, mainly because it's easy to link up to Content Cow, and I didn't have it all in the automation stuff before. And I've tried to invigorate the Facebook group as we've been talking about. So all of the stuff I do through Content Cow goes out into the Facebook group as well. It comes as from me, not from the club, but it's getting there anyway, and it's an opportunity to discuss things, even if that doesn't happen in reality. So I'm trying to ask questions in every post as well to try and get some feedback, and I'm trying to be less scattergun by just doing stuff and off it goes. So I've changed quite a lot, but I wouldn't necessarily say I'm seeing results yet. But things build at the beginning of the season. We normally have our first event as the very first event of the season. We were the first people to get canned by COVID, and by the looks of things, we're the last people to be canned by COVID as well. So our event should be this Saturday. It is what it is, isn't it? So things are building, and hopefully that will kind of help snowball with the Facebook group. We'll see.
Yeah, I'm with you. So, I mean, what would you say, like, outside of like the resource challenge, which I think everyone would be united by on this session, right? So outside of the resource challenge, what's the main challenge that you think you face in terms of doing content marketing, social media, for example?
Well, I think Izzy said it really well earlier. I think it was Izzy that said it. Unless you're like in social media all day, every day, it's really hard to understand. Like, I didn't know TikTok was anything more than random 15-second dances by people, you know. I mean, how would I know that? I've never been on it. Turns out my mum's on it, but you know, that's another story. Maybe I should get my mum doing this. For me, it's the creativity, and the fact that every platform wants a slightly different format. So like Facebook, you can write as much as you like, you can put pictures in, you can do whatever you like and put links. Everything just works on Facebook. Same with LinkedIn, pretty much. Instagram, post a link, nah, that's not gonna happen. You can't put, like, see a link in my bio. I don't have time to change the link in the bio every day. Come on. And then I have to generate pictures. Canva's brilliant for pictures. You look on our social media, and it's all just Canva. Just type some words, bring in a picture, bosh, done. Change the colors to our own color. fantastic. It suits me. Shoot from the hip again. But yeah, and then Twitter, like you can only post that much. So you end up doing the same thing over and over. You do a short one, you do a long one, you do one with a link, you do one without a link, one with an image, one without an image. And all of a sudden you've written the same content 5 times over, and it's really frustrating.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you. It's like, do you want to share anything actually in terms of your like stuff on your Facebook group or page or whatever, just so that kind of bring it to life a little bit? You've been very, very open and honest. Actually, it's really valuable.
Here's where the comments come in. Yeah. So well, this is our page. So like we're getting very little engagement. Well, I suppose like this is the last month, so 4,000 people reached, but in terms of engagement, not a huge amount. Maybe if I, where are we? I've got the insights here, and lots of messages from Alan. Not that he's been messaging me all the way through this or anything. So like you look at our engagement on the insights and you can see like the reach is okay. It's in the hundreds of every post. Occasionally we get a little bit more, but the engagement is generally tiny. Like our biggest engagement recently was a post about Murray Walker, because everyone loves Murray, don't they? So not really the best thing to be our best promotional thing for the last month, but prior to that, like just a silly picture that I shot from the hip again with Boris. Let's go racing. That's been our most popular thing for months. But what I do find is that what gets more engagement and works better than anything else is video, which, as you can see, I don't post very much of. And our history stuff sometimes goes really well. So I've scanned in all of we're 110 years old. We got so much content, it's unbelievable. So I've scanned in all of our old like 1950s magazines, and I post them on Throwback Thursdays sometimes, and sometimes they're really popular. Sometimes they're not, but I find it really hard to work out what's a good, I never know whether it's going to be popular until it goes out. And sometimes it just kind of takes off and people start commenting. I'm like, wow, didn't see that coming. And then other times I think it's going to be brilliant. It's going to be brilliant. And then it's just like tumbleweed.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I think you're actually probably overly harsh on yourself, because some of the numbers on here are not bad at all, to be honest. So, yeah, I mean, not all of them, but some of them are really strong. So I think you're probably overly critical of yourself, to be honest. I guess the probably overriding thing, and you've described yourself as scattergun numerous times, the overriding thing, there's not much consistency here, really. Ultimately, there's quite a lot of differences between the type of content. So before I put any kind of narrative on it, and this isn't meant to be picking your content plan apart, because I actually think it's, to see this level of engagement, that's, obviously the Boris one did really well, but 2,500 people seeing your post about Bristol Motor Club is a really, really good thing, right? That's just goes to show, the power of engagements once again. But even the ones that didn't get as much engagement, like your kind of entries open for the Wiscombe Park Hill climb, for example, I'm just picking that one out. So it's a link post, which typically don't do very well, link posts, because they're linking people off to something else. There's no real creative in that either, but that didn't do badly either, though. So I wouldn't class that as terrible. Like, Izzy, from having a look at this, do you have any kind of overriding thoughts or suggestions?
I did just want to say I have the same thing. Sometimes I post things and they do, like, I'm struggling to figure it out too, like, because I think, oh, this would be really good because it's getting people to reminisce, and then no one comments on it, and I'm like, oh, people, I guess people just don't have memories about that then. But yeah, I think the thing with the links, we've always been taught with the like when I did do a social media module for my degree, but obviously it was journalism based social media, so it's not really the same, but we were always taught, don't link people away from your content, like more so with like when we write news articles for a website, don't put a load of links in there because you're driving people away from what you want them to interact with. So they're just going to click the link and then interact with what you've linked rather than interacting with your post. But I mean, yeah, sometimes you post stuff, like I think I did one where I'd like found a really cool video on Canva. It's just a generic like car video, and I'd like edited it and I'd put stuff over it, and then like no one interacted with it. And I was like, really? Like,
whereas I had the opposite. I stood at the side of the track as Heather Calder came past in her like 700 horsepower V8 single seater, and I just got my phone out, just went as she went past, uploaded it. 20,000 views later, I was like, what happened there? It was just off the cuff. Mental. That's the most successful post we've ever had, and no editing, no thought. I didn't plan it, like everything.
But I guess, yeah, looking at this, and I think the example you give there, and we're looking at two motorsport orientated like content, you know, well, we're not looking at content plans, we're looking at the results, but very few of these actually have anything to do with the subject matter that we're all so passionate about, right? Because we don't have that. We don't have ability to put videos or photos of the stuff that's happening at events, for example. So I think you're both doing a fabulous job, considering we're all working to distinctly limited creative options here. So the fact that you're both building towards this and seeing, you know, there's still decent engagement happening here. Just as a bit of a side note, actually, because I'd be interested to experiment with some different post timings if I were you, Andy. You know, looking at your Boris one worked really well because that was midday. But the rest of them all around kind of like lunchtime, actually. And actually, I can see that revised 2021 Vincenzo calendar, that was a midday orientated post, and that did all right as well. So might want to mix up the timings as well a little bit, I think. Experimenting a bit with yeah. So
yeah, I tend to do evenings, but I tend to vary it during the evening. The daytime ones are more likely to be weekends. So I've noticed that early morning on a Sunday, people don't get out of bed, but they do pick up their phone. They're on Facebook all morning. So you get lots of engagement on a Sunday morning.
Yeah, it's interesting. Actually, I was reading some data the other day, and it was like across all industries, so we can take it with a pinch of salt, but where Facebook engagement in general on a weekend across the spectrum is actually really high. So yeah, your numbers kind of bear some of that out as well. Kind of interesting.
It's hard to tell with this stuff because Facebook show it in Pacific Standard Time, I think, and you know, to me that's like Fahrenheit. I haven't got a clue.
Yes, no point.
Am I boiling water or am I putting on a jacket? I don't know.
Yeah, so yeah, it's definitely worthwhile experimenting with those times as you've been, but I think just some guidance for everyone else on the call actually to mix it up and, you know, try with the weekends and try evenings and daytimes, because it's, you know, it's a constant learning exercise, and it's the same, you know, and Izzy made a point earlier about like you know, a memories or reminiscing oriented posts, like sometimes they do really well and sometimes they just bomb, but it's all down, it's a case of chance really, that if no one picked up their phone at that point that you posted that and it wasn't shared to them and they didn't go on Facebook for the last week, they're not going to see it. So it's just, you know, it's a bit of a numbers game, to be honest. So
yeah, on the timings thing, I try and like at the start of the week, I haven't done it this week, so I should take my own advice, but at the start of the week or maybe on a Sunday when I've got like a quiet 5 minutes, I'll try and schedule those Facebook group posts so I don't have to think about it in the week. So say like, you know, I've got uni or whatever, so I don't like miss the time that I want to post at. I schedule it, and a couple of the weeks I just, when I was first doing it, I just like Monday's post was, it'll change day to day, so it's probably not the best way of doing it because, you know, sometimes, you know, as we said, weekends is different and things like that. But Monday's post will be like, I'll try and do it at 9 a.m. and see if anyone's on their phone in the morning. And then Wednesday's post, I'll do it at 5:30. And then Friday's post, I'll do it at 7, trying to think about times where I would be on my phone. But then I have different habits as a 21-year-old than a lot of our members do. So then I'm thinking, when's my mum on her phone? When's my dad on his phone? And trying to figure out how, when they're on their phone and you know, because I wake up, my alarm goes off and I immediately pick up my phone for half an hour. But then I don't think my mum does that. So then I've got to think about that. But in terms of the experimentation, like even if you know that it's going to possibly make some of your posts just absolutely, you know, not have any engagement, it is quite a good thing for you to do as an experiment, is to just do similar posts and just post them at different times and then see what time works best. Because that's kind of how I figured out most of mine at the moment. I'm putting at 6 o'clock because that seems to be a good time. So yeah, that on timings, I just experiment.
So I'm going with a variety of times, because my theory is if I go for 6 o'clock every night, I'm getting the same person at 6 o'clock every night, or the same group. Whereas if I'm going at 6 o'clock one night, I'm getting the people that, you know, tea's in the oven. I've got 5 minutes before all hell breaks loose. But then if I get the if I then put one out at 8:30, then it's the people that have just put the kids to bed and they're sat down on the sofa and they're like, glass of wine, what's on Facebook? But I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, it's a lifetime's work trying to figure this stuff out, because everything, what will work for you won't work for someone else. So I think the only truism here is a bit of experimentation, and you know the point that Izzy made about like pre-scheduling stuff, so that there is some kind of logic behind what you're doing, in that you're going to set something at this particular time. Just make your times up. What we're trying to not do is just have to do it in the moment and think, oh damn, I've got to put out a post, and just try and do that in the moment. It's trying to create a bit of a structure and a bit of a plan, I think it's a good lesson for most things, which is, yeah, this will definitely apply to. So
it's interesting to see if people's habits change when lockdown's over and events are happening. I imagine then we have to look again at what times posts is good.
Yeah, well, that's exactly it, because behaviors are going to change once again. So yeah, that is fascinating. But I think, it's been really interesting taking a bit of a deep dive into both of your approaches, Izzy and Andy, and thank you so much for being so open and sharing so much, because it's not easy. I mean, we're working resource limited. There's definite challenges, but I think the encouraging thing is that we've seen some really good growth on both of your channels, despite the fact that we don't really have any new content to talk about. We have no events. We have nothing actually going on yet. You're still finding ways to get people to continue thinking about your club, continue keeping your name in people's news feeds. And it's just, you know, even no matter how critical you are of yourself, Andy, you're doing something, and something is better than nothing. And that is a really important thing to take away, because, you know, you're very humble and very self-critical, but ultimately you're seeing, you know, that's thousands of people every single month that are seeing Bristol Motor Club appear on Facebook. So I think that in itself is incredibly powerful for keeping your brand in people's minds. And like the question earlier, going back to that, is that the more you can get people to engage and get your brand in front of people, the conversion that comes off the back of it is made heaps easier, because you've got that trust, you've got that connection, and we grow from there. So And this will just get easier and easier as time goes on. And once we get loads of our creativity quandary gets solved, because we can take pictures of cars going fast round tracks. And that's what we all want. So with that, let me have a quick dive into the Q&A. Great. So let's see. I don't know if you want to get that one from Stanley, Claire, because that's not one for me to pick up. If anyone else has any questions, however, now is the time to pop them in the chat before we close the session.
I was just going to pick up on the content thing. We've got loads of content because I've carried a camera or a phone or something, and we've recorded loads of stuff in the past. But what I always find is that whilst I've got loads of content, I don't have the right content. So like you want to do a little video for this, and so, well, what we need is a shot of a car in the paddock. And then you realize that every single video clip you've got is a car on a track competing. You haven't got any pictures of faces, any humans at all, unless they've got a crash helmet on, and nothing unless it's a car in competition. And I think that's one thing I've learned, that you just need to get a load of different pictures and videos of all kinds of stuff at your events. And even if you just think it's, you know, pointless, just like pictures of like the bonnet badges or whatever, people just having a laugh and a joke in the paddock, it's got to be worth doing, because you'll kick yourself in 3 weeks time when you need that.
Yeah, I think that variety is really important in creating a story, which is something when I do journalism related things, we often ask people, well, at the moment, because we can't film them ourselves, we ask them our interviewees to film themselves like making a cup of tea or, you know, doing something really mundane, and they're like, why on earth would you put that in there? But it's because it tells the story of who they are, and what you're doing on social media is telling the story of your club basically and what you're doing. So you just need to get like every time, even if you think it's like so stupid and so like inconsequential and it's not ever, you're never going to post it on social media, there will be that one time where you really need it and you were like, this is the best idea, but you don't have that content because you haven't taken people when they're not pictures of people when they're not in the car, or, you know, like you said, with crash helmets on or whatever, and you need that shot of everyone standing around looking happy, because people will want to come and join your club if they see pictures of people looking happy, kind of thing.
Yeah,
I'm just going to pick up on Stanley's comment in the Q&A about using it as a way of updating club members with Motorsport UK updates, which I think, yes, you can use our updates as content and sharing it with your members and as a way of communicating with members. But I think it's also really important that you have all your own content as well. Like you say, you need to create that tone of voice and feel for your own club so that the members get to know you as a club, not just what Motorsport UK is telling you, all the updates of regulations and when motorsport can happen and things like that. So yeah, I think it's got to be a balance between it both.
Definitely agree, definitely.
Also, car clubs often do different types of events. Like some car clubs, like, so we do quite a bit of rally stuff, but some car clubs will do more of, you know, other, you know, karting or hill climb or what, you know, whatever. Everyone sort of does more of other things, and if you don't tell people that, then they're trying to look for a place to do karting, and Southern Car Club, we don't do any karting, so there's not really much point in them coming to us. And you need to tell people that you need to let people know what you're about. Yeah, and actually I meant to say, and I keep forgetting, I didn't know that car clubs were a thing until I saw Louise's post on Girls on Track, because you know, I've been a fan because my dad's a fan, my granddad's a fan of F1 more than sort of other, and I'm learning loads about other types of motorsport. I'm really loving it, but I didn't know grassroots motorsport was a thing, and I found out through social media. Well, obviously I did know grassroots motorsport was a thing, but I didn't know car clubs was a thing, and I found out through social media and through a Facebook group. So it kind of just goes to show like just how important it is to tell people who you are.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
found the same thing actually, but 20 odd years ago. I didn't know that car clubs were a thing, but the internet was tiny back then. And so I Googled it. Was it Google? Yeah, it probably was Google. And Bristol Motor Club was like forerunner, and we had a website. And I found this web page that explained how to get involved in motorsport and that you needed to join a car club, and there was a link to the Bristol Motor Club webpage. They had a web page. The rest is history. So this is just like the later version of it, surely.
Pretty much. And Simon nailed it on the head there. Club motorsport is the country's best kept secret. Yep, because this is a new thing to me until I met Claire and Ian. So yeah, consider my eyes opened too. So yeah, that's a challenge in its own right. Definitely. But collectively, it's something that everyone has the ability to solve. We've got the communication channels. If we can find the time to do it, you know, that's the opportunity, because there's a lot more people than like the three of us on this call that want to do this stuff but have no idea it exists, and that is the opportunity in front of us ultimately.
Absolutely.
So with that, I think that's probably a good note and tone to conclude the session and yeah, conclude this 5-month thing. So thank you, Izzy. Thank you, Andy, so much for being so open and honest, and it's been a really valuable session. I've really enjoyed the insight as well. So thank you for being part of it, and thank you for putting these on, Claire. Really appreciate it.
Well, and a huge thank you to you. We've not paid you for these either. You're doing it free for us. So thank you so much, Andy. It's been brilliant to have this whole series for the clubs. I think we've had so much positive feedback. I think it's been really helpful for the club. So yeah, thank you for everyone tonight for watching, but for also being part of our panelists and everyone. So thank you. As I said, there'll be a survey that comes out afterwards. So do fill that in, and you can always drop me an email as well if you want to at club.development@motorsportuk.org. So yeah, thank you and goodbye.